See shaw.com/offers.
Manx Radio Weather with Manx Glass and Glazing.
Jeremiah, thank you, Christian, from the Ronaldsway Met Office. There is a strong wind warning in operation for the North Irish Sea. State of sea is moderate or rough tonight. And there's also a warning for coastal overtopping around high tide, which is in half an hour's time. But today's weather, dry with sunny spells, isolated showers on that strong southwesterly, top temperature 16 Celsius, mostly dry after dark, overnight minimum 13. For tomorrow, Thursday, Jordan, cloudy with scattered showers on the fresh to strong southeasterly up to 16 degrees. Then a wet and windy night down to 13. Into Friday, Jehenya, which will be dry first thing with sunny intervals. Daytime maximum 16 degrees. Well, high water's at 25 to 1, and there's a risk of coastal overtopping at Shore Road, Russian, Castletown Prom, and the northern end of Douglas Promenade for at least an hour or so after that. Sunset's 3 minutes to 6 tonight, low tide a minute past 7, high water 3 minutes to 1 a.m, low water tomorrow morning 17 minutes past 7, the sun rises at 8 minutes past 8, and the clocks go back this Sunday.
If you have failed glazing units, speak to the team at Manx Glass and Glazing. Call 674 573.
Waltons have large stocks of home appliances ready to go. Washing machines to large fridge freezers, Smeg, Samsung and Hotpoint. Visit Waltons opposite Eden Park on the Isle of Man Business Park or go to waltons.im.
Oh, me back! You need to get totified, mate. What if I'd? Totified with Wens. 2 St Paul Square, Ramsey. A back massage is only £15. Here you go, 478 465. I'd call now, mate.
Before you excavate anywhere on the island, make sure you ring Isle of Man Energy. Be safe, not sorry, and dial 64425 before you dig.
If you have IBS, IBD, or need a general gut wellness consultation, visit I'll Love Your Gut. Our qualified clinic can diagnose and create a personalised wellness plan. Enjoy your life again. Visit I'lLoveYourGut.com.
The Mannin Line, brought to you by NetZeroMatrix.com. Helping Isle of Man companies and citizens to understand net zero targets and a green future.
Pastor Mike, good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. Alex Allinson, MHK Treasury Minister, is on today between now and 1. If there's anything you want to bring up, anything you'd like to ask, by all means, get in touch. Call 66 13 68, text 166 177. WhatsApp, same number, but you can also email studio@manxradio.com. Well, we have a cost of living crisis. Inflation has reared its ugly head. And Alex Allinson, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Andy.
It seems everybody wants money, and you're the person, presumably, who has to say no to some people.
I try to say yes occasionally. I think you're right. There are so many crises at the moment, and I think that's generating an awful lot of fear and anxiety across our island and across the world, really. And so at this time, I think the role of government is really to try to reassure people that we have got a grip with this, and that we can get through it together. But it is going to be difficult. Government can't do everything. People will have to adjust and adapt to seismic changes in terms of energy prices. And the question is, will gas prices ever go down to the way they were in 2019? I don't think so. In the same way as back in the 70s, for those of us old enough to remember, petrol never went back to the way it was after the rise in oil prices, which again was caused by a war that time in the Middle East.
Okay, well, interestingly enough, you raised something that Alan dropped a note in to say. It came in overnight. Thank you, Alan. And just said, the answer surely cannot be spending public money all the time. Yep. And is it a generational thing? Have some people learned that, spend is the way? It used to be once upon a time. People did have household budgets. Yep. People did look in their purse or wallet and didn't spend money that they didn't have. So, is there a generation of people who don't quite have those skills?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure of the answer, and thanks to Alan for asking it. I actually think on the Isle of Man we've got a very resilient community, and that showed up through COVID, where people actually helped themselves. But people have become dependent on government to some extent, and we are there. We have to be there to help. Yeah. I think what we have seen is since the financial crash in 2008, wages haven't kept up with inflation. Prices have gone up. Interest rates have been at historic lows, and maybe we had a false sense of security. It was always going to be like that. And my kids have always grown up where credit was cheap and readily available. Now we're going back to the way it was back in the 70s and 80s, where people with mortgages were used to paying double-digit interest on their mortgages. But what we've seen is going from 0.5% to 4, 5, 6%. It's such a seismic change, combined with the cost of housing, is really shaken people.
So if somebody's on a tracker mortgage, fixed rate's fine, but if they're on a tracker mortgage and they're suddenly faced with a rise in their mortgage payment per month, which historically they've never had, as you say, low interest rates are very seductive. And then suddenly they're having to find £200-300 more per month for a mortgage payment.
And that's why it's really interesting talking to you today, because a month ago, everyone would be worried about their gas bills, and quite rightly so. They've gone up, they've doubled. Now people perhaps are more worried about their mortgage bills coming in. What I would say is if people are worried about that, please go and have a chat with your mortgage lender. The banks actually have been really quite accommodating. So people coming off fixed rate and having to negotiate another fixed rate, they're extending the window period to do that. So you've actually got a bit of choice, because the banks are in the same situation. They're setting mortgage rates for 2 or 3 years. They're not quite sure which way things are going to go. And after the announcement of the new Prime Minister across, it looks like interest rates might come down again a little bit. So, I mean, it is a matter of, I think, of taking stock, getting good advice, making the right decision for your own personal finances, because the way the increase in cost of living and inflation have affected people is very, very individual. It's affecting everyone, but to varying degrees.
Okay, Stephen's with us now, live on Mannin Line. Hi, Stephen. You're live with the Treasury Minister.
Oh, good afternoon, Minister, and good afternoon, listeners, and good afternoon, Andy.
Good afternoon.
Minister, could I ask, just set the scene first. I know you've got the community at heart, because my great niece is in the panto at Ramsey, and she speaks very fondly of your efforts.
Oh no, she doesn't.
Oh yes, she does. Now, I'm sure that you will be aware of this, so I'd like to bounce some things off you, if I may. Firstly, in the UK Parliament, in the last the King's speech, they included a part to ensure access in the community of cash, to ensure that banks provide the cash. Now, on our island, as you will be aware, we were very reliant on the Isle of Man Bank, but sadly, its services that it provides has diminished. So from Port Erin up through the west coast, Peel, you've got to go round the curve to Ramsey before you hit the next bank. Now, we do have a post office network, and there's questions to be asked, I believe, and addressed by Coleman, yourself, and Tynwald, as to how we're going to provide some post office services. Now, as you're also aware, government give all sorts of subventions to various groups, companies and charities to help them keep going. But there seems to be a pretty rigid application when it comes to the post office of what it can and can't do and what help it can and cannot do. Now, for me, I believe sub-post offices are a very good, vital part of the community, and we do have them, and they can help with this access to cash. So, to boil it down, my two questions to you are, have you considered how we can ensure access to cash on our island? And given that we've got no banks from Port Erin up round the curve and in middle as well, no bank facilities, can we ensure that we give some support to the post offices to provide this access to cash and the community services that they also provide?
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your for your question. And there are a couple of strands there. In terms of access to cash, I think that's a very valid comment. What government have done is we've been working through the Department for Enterprise, through the banks, through the finance agency to look at problems with access to cash. And it's very real when you've got high street banks closing down their branches. And this has happened right across the UK. As you say, in the United Kingdom, what they've done is got all the banks together and made them share facilities such as ATMs. And we're looking at doing the same, and have reached out to the Link organisation to see whether we can get cash machines in communities, particularly those who don't have any banks there at all. So that's work ongoing, and hopefully we can get that finalised. There's new technology whereby people can pay in money through these machines as well, and also pay in cheques by using their smartphones and scanning them and things like that. And working with the banks, we can develop that. But you also bring up the whole aspect about the post office network and the availability of sub-post offices, both in terms of access to cash, but access to benefits and access to other government services. And we are working with the post office. I've been with meetings with those people who run the retail network, the sub-post offices, who are obviously running independent private businesses, but also looking at how we can support the post office to provide local services where they're needed. And so we announced recently that the MyCard scheme is being renewed so that people can get their benefits locally in cash from the post office network, and we'll be working with the post office to see how we can provide that access to cash, but also working with the banks to see how we can try to make sure that as we move towards more electronic payments, that everyone's included with that, because there are some people who can't or sometimes won't have a bank account, and that's always a bit of a challenge for businesses, but also for government as well.
Well, that's very pleasing to know that you're looking at this problem. And it is a real problem in the community, and also I think there's a number of people that do want the face-to-face counter service that the sub-post offices can provide, and also the access to cash. Because in Peel, for example, we're very dependent upon the post office for many services. They do provide banking services for Lloyds and Barclays as well, not just using a cash machine. So there's this need to have cash in the community, and possibly if there's a cost, well, I would hope that you would consider that we use taxpayers' funds to help that, because we do it for many organisations and charitable organisations, and I don't see why. In this regard, sub-post offices can't be considered for that.
OK, all right, Stephen, we appreciate that point. Thanks for calling today. And lines are open between now and 1. Thank you, Stephen. And Angie, you're live with Alex Allinson, MHK.
Hi, thank you. I have a quick question. It's regarding students, uni students. The scenario on the island is pretty desperate. Lots still haven't got their applications approved by Student Awards. But the financial side of it is what I want to question on. None of them got any help with heating allowance. Accommodation with inclusive bills across now is going to be a very rare thing. My son's accommodation this year, he did get inclusive bills. Last minute small print, they've upped the cost. Next year, none of the accommodations apparently are going to have inclusive heating bills. In the rental agreement, it's going to be pay as you go. There's been no increase in any help or support for students, and it's tough. It's really tough. Some are pulling out. Some haven't got their awards for this year, and they've pulled out, but they seem to be the forgotten people in this financial crisis. I just wondered if there's any way they could consider, I know the pot's empty, but for those who are desperate and rather than fall out of university, a student loan.
Well, Angie, thanks very much for your question. I mean, there are student loans available through the Department for Education, Sport and Culture for people, and I certainly will look into those delays around the student awards and why they're a problem. We've got on the Isle of Man, obviously, for students going across, maintenance grants as well, which are means tested, and certainly I will look in to see if we can upgrade those, because I agree with you that the increased cost of living across is causing problems for those people on fixed incomes or low incomes, and the availability for some students to take on extra work can be very difficult when they're studying full time. So I'll certainly look into that. But again, what I would say is if students are running into problems, please reach out to the department, because there are various hardship funds there that they can draw upon in particular cases as well.
How much is he out of pocket, Angie?
I would say his accommodation fee, he gets $2,500 loan for his course fees. That's the only loan that is available. We don't qualify for a maintenance grant at all. We're both working. It's done on your earnings rather than your assets. So I've got friends who have extraordinarily large amounts of assets and they get it free. But we are just normal working people, so we have to pay. I would say we're paying $14,000 a year for accommodation and living costs for my son, and we get no help with that other than the fees.
Right. I mean, I thank you for going through your personal details, and obviously I completely respect the situation you're in. What I would say, though, is that there are some private finances available through various banks in terms of student loans. So that might be an issue. But also, if he is running into problems at university, as I said, please reach out to the department. But I'll look into the support that's available, going into to next year, to see if we can make sure that Manx students are supported as much as possible across.
Okay. Final word, Angie.
It's not just about my son. We're managing, we're surviving, but I know many students who are dropping out. And it's becoming a scenario that it's university for the rich, not for everybody, and that's abominable.
Okay,
that needs to be addressed.
Angie, we appreciate that call. Thanks for calling today, and certainly something I wasn't aware of, but obviously there are lots of people in that position. Thanks, Angie. Howard, you're live with Alex Allinson, MHK.
Good afternoon, Andy. Good afternoon, Minister.
Afternoon.
A couple of questions, but you may be able to answer. A while ago, the government, as such, borrowed £400 million at a fixed term or as a term of interest. Was that a fixed term for the length of the loan, the period of the loan, or is it flexible? I asked this question the other day. And is it moving in line with the present rates of interest? Secondly, I noticed on one of the websites, the news websites, that a suggestion has been made to transfer the steam railway to a charitable trust. Now, that's only a suggestion, but what is the idea behind it? Because a charitable trust ties up all the goods. It's like having power of attorney, and it's very restrictive.
Well, thank you very much, Howard. The first question, I was actually asked that in Tynwald last week, and I can confirm that the sustainable bond that was taken out is at a fixed rate of 1.6% over 30 years and won't go up and down according to the interest rates. So that is locked in terms of government borrowing. In terms of the heritage railways, I know that Minister Thomas was talking about perhaps moving that into a sort of a slightly different body, whether that was a charitable trust or even a sort of a board to run that slightly separately to the rest of the transport network, so that it could be developed in the same way as quite a few of the steam railways across are run by charitable trusts or foundations. And certainly he's looking into that, but I don't think there's been any definite decisions made yet.
No, because as opposed, as you just say now, the charitable trusts across, they're run by volunteers, etc., and on a charitable basis. But this is owned and run, and the lands that they run on, and all the equipment, buildings, etc., are all part of the loosely said DOI. It could change, but they belong to the people of the island, not to a charitable trust. And it's virtually like, it'll be giving it away to somebody else that can move it around to suit themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right that the heritage railways have become an integral part of the way the department works, and also become linked in with the other parts of public transport that we have here. I think what Minister Thomas is looking at is things like Manx National Heritage and the way that they become the custodians of various things that we really treasure, and whether there is a better way of running the heritage railways than strictly from DOI headquarters. And that's what he's looking into at the moment.
Yeah, it was a worrying aspect when I saw that, and very little, well, I appreciate he couldn't do it, but very little detail, and as a very important part of our island heritage, I think it should remain exactly as it is with the government, and over its years for the future, it can only be progressed into something better. It can morph from what it was, and it's moving quite rapidly through, and it is an excellent railway system now. And it'd be a shame to lose it by putting it into something that's not transferable and not workable.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I don't think anyone's talking about losing it, but at the same time, we're talking about the cost of living and priorities. I mean, I remember when I was a backbencher finding out that I think we spend more money on the heritage railways than we do supporting students. And we've just heard from the previous listener about the problems there. So I think we do need to look at the best way we spend your taxpayers' money in terms of this.
Well, I don't mean to be pedantic or facetious in this thing, but the students go away and they are building themselves a future. Mm-hmm. The future for the railways is within the hands of the government, and that's what it should be looked at. A large percentage, and this was on Andy's programme last week when he went to Russian school and Ramsey school, a large part of those people said they would go away, but they wouldn't be coming back because there's nothing here. Mm-hmm. Now, I know that lady was just on a minute ago, and she said about her family having to pay out money for this. But the railways are already here. A large part of it is decimated, but a large part of it is still here, and this should be kept within government and maintained.
Okay, all right, Howard, thanks for calling today. I've got a note in from Richard on the Facebook page. It just said, Dr. Allinson, could you qualify, when you say you're in talks with the post office, what do talks mean? Because the government could tell the post office to have post officers available. Why do you have to talk to them about it?
Because I like to talk to people and try to reach consensus rather than order people about. I mean, the post office, as you'll probably be aware, has a board structure, and they have regular meetings of the board, and they determine policies and strategies. Those come then to Tynwald for ratification, and what I'm keen on doing is making sure that the post office, one, work effectively for the people of this nation, but two, provide those services that people really need. And so as things are changing in terms of both the number of letters people post reducing, the number of parcels coming in increasing, but also aspects around things like access to cash, then I think the post office does need to change, but actually be helped to develop in what I think and what the people of the Isle of Man think is the right way. So it is a conversation, it is working with that board with conflicting priorities for them in terms of the costs of running the retail network, the support they give to sub-post officers, but also making sure that it provides the right services.
Okay, TT this is now, and obviously Treasury has an interest in TT because, as Mr. Hooper was saying, there is a business case for TT, what does Treasury have a view on the future of motorsport, things like the new race schedule and what have you, and also is it better for Isle of Man finances? So the back of the question is, how does Treasury view the TT?
Personally, I mean, we were talking just about heritage railways. Personally, I think the TT is part of our heritage, but also it can evolve, it can change, it can develop for new audiences. I know earlier on that you had various conversations on Manx Radio about the revised race schedule, and that's one of the ways that it can change, it can develop in ways that it always has done. The TT has never stood still. I think it is one of the major selling points of our island. It obviously provides a lot of a big draw for tourists to come to the island, but also it gives a bit of dynamism that I think that the island needs. One of the things that happened during COVID was the part of the Department for Enterprise that deal with motorsports sat down and just started from a blank sheet in terms of what the TT could look like in the future. And part of that was about the race schedule and seeing how easy it was for people to get here. But also part of it was about live streaming the TT. And we saw that for the first time this year. And there were lots of doubts whether it would work or not. I thought it was absolutely fabulous that I could be trackside, get my mobile phone out and see the racing going past me at the same time. It was amazing, display of new technology and the way that can open up a far bigger marketplace right all the way around the world, because we take the TT, I think, a bit for granted, really. I complain about the roads being shut and open and everything, but it is a world-class event. It needs to get out there. And by advertising it more, that helps boost the status of the Isle of Man, but also helps with things like sponsorship and aspects like that. So I see a very bright future for the TT, but it will evolve, it will constantly change, it will have to, always has done, and always should do.
Okay, a message in now. This is Howell, who said, could the Minister actually clarify what's the position of the Isle of Man steam packet regarding the Treasury? Does the Treasury have an interest or a representation on the board? What's the connection?
So when the decision was made to buy the Isle of Man steam packet company from the private fund who owned it, Treasury became the shareholder. So yes, we do have a representative on the steam packet board. They don't make the decisions. The whole idea behind buying steam packet was to bring it into public ownership, but run it as an arm's length organisation. I think when we bought it, it was making around about £20 million profit a year, was to siphon that into the business itself rather than it going offshore, to use that to buy new boats and regenerate the fleet, but to make sure also we had that control and resilience over the main way of getting things to and from the island. So yes, Treasury is the shareholder. We take part in some of the decision making, but also there is the Sea Services Agreement through the Department for Infrastructure, who run the ports, which looks at various other aspects such as the schedule and also the fares.
Okay, who's the Treasury representative on the board?
Normally it would be the Chief Executive Officer. I've been to a board meeting as well, just to not, again, to sit there to listen, to communicate some of the political aspects of things like fares, like the schedules, like concerns over silting in Heysham and when the Liverpool landing stage is going to be finished, but very much not getting into the operational delivery of what is a really vital part of our culture, okay, and also our island.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because Perry dropped a note in. Again, it was another overnight note, and it was regarding Heysham, which is saying, obviously, the west coast of England is gradually coming out of the sea. It is silting up. If our new boat is too big for Heysham, who will be left with the bill to dredge Heysham Port? Is it Peel Ports, or will it be the Isle of Man?
I mean, the new Manxman isn't too big to get into Heysham. It's not quite as big as the Heysham Max boats that they use. The responsibility really of dredging it in Peel, in Heysham, is Peel Holdings, who control the port. So that's one of their responsibilities. I know there have been issues in the past. I think a lot of that's been around sudden build-up of silt and the availability of the dredgers. But certainly it's very much up to them to maintain that port, because they own it and they run it commercially.
Okay, Julian, you're live with Alex Allinson, MHK.
Hi, Andy, and hi, Alex. Question for you, Alex. Aside from the increased energy prices that we're now having, what have been the financial losses as a result of sanctioning Russian citizens, in terms of blocking banking, and then you've got the shipping and the aircraft registry?
Yeah, very good question. In terms of the financial losses to the Isle of Man government, obviously deregistering ships and aircraft, you lose the registration fees. That's relatively small amount of money. I think in terms of freezing assets, again, that hasn't necessarily impacted government revenue. We do have some companies on the Isle of Man who previously were servicing Russian-linked companies, some of which have been sanctioned, and therefore their commercial fees, some of their work stream has gone out the window. But I think it's very important that we maintain the best standards we can in terms of international regulation. So I think the effect of this on the Isle of Man has been relatively small, but concentrated very much in terms of individual companies. But we do have a Russian community on the Isle of Man and now a Ukrainian community as well. I know that certain people here have found it very difficult to send money to relatives who they used to support quite actively, and that has become a real issue and a real concern for them.
Yeah. Does the Isle of Man government have any kind of plan to have some representation to try and sort it out diplomatically rather than the way it's going, do you think?
Not well. I wish we had. I wish we had an answer to the problems in Ukraine. I know that Minister Lord Brennan, when she was over in London earlier on in the year, met with the Ukrainian ambassador, has worked with them to try to get some targeted relief and financial assistance to people in the Ukraine. In terms of sorting it out, I hope we can reach a solution to what is a very much a bloody war over there. But the way it looks at the moment, it is an ongoing conflict rather than anyone sitting around the negotiating table. And in fact, their president has said, Zelensky has said he won't negotiate with Putin. He's waiting for his successor. So at the moment, it is very much trying to support the international sanctions, trying to support those Ukrainians who have come to our island and welcome them, but also deal with any of the further fallout of this horrible situation we have right in the centre of Europe.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Julian.
Thanks very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And Alex Allinson, MHK, Treasury Minister. What part does Treasury play? Does it have a relationship with the Financial Crime Unit? We're talking about anti-money laundering and sanctioning Russians. Does Treasury get involved in any of that?
We do in that all the various sanctions that need to be done normally have my signature on them before they come to Tynwald. So we work very closely with UK and European authorities in terms of sanctions. If one of the crime units need access to various financial documents, obviously we will give that to them. So we work quite closely with law enforcement when necessary. And obviously at the start of this conflict, we got in contact with all the various CSPs banks around the island to make them aware of the exposure, to make them aware of what was coming, to make sure that if they did have any doubts about people they were dealing with, that they might be on a sanctions list, they could get the right advice from the department.
So Dr. Allinson's with us till 1 o'clock today on Manx Radio. It's 24 minutes before 1. You want to get in touch? Text, email, call or WhatsApp.
Hey, man, do you know the way to Conister Bank? I hear they're, really cosmic, Daddy-O.
Sorry, mate. Didn't understand a word of that.
It's cool, brother. Peace.
Thanks to Conister, it doesn't matter if you live like yesterday, you can still drive tomorrow's car with green finance to make sustainability more affordable for everyone.
Beautiful, man.
Conister Green Finance. Visit conisterbank.co.im/green to find out more.
All loans are subject to status, terms, conditions and early settlement fees apply.
Metals, IMB Metals. For steel, appeal. The number you need is for steel. That's Metals, IMB Metals.
For structural steel and cladding, collection or delivery, with installation available too, just call 4Steel. That's 457 881.
Metals, IMB Metals.
Are your clothes not fitting the way they used to? Cool Sculpting's patented non-invasive cooling technology is designed to target and kill fat cells with no surgery or downtime. Tracy Bell can assess your needs and advise if it's right for you. If you'd like to find out more about this revolutionary non-invasive fat reduction treatment from Cool Sculpting, call us today on 613323 or visit tracybell.co.uk to book your free cool sculpting consultation.
There are exciting things happening at Mrs. Yang's, with builders, plumbers and electricians hard at work. We're open as normal while work continues, so come and see what's happening. Mrs. Yang's, North Quay, Douglas. Phone 886 886.
Sweet and Swing, served to you by the Wine Cellar.
And this is Howard Kane. Do you like your music more like this than this? Then you don't need to change channel, just tune into Sweet and Swing here on Manx Radio every Friday evening. From Al Bowley to Xavier Cugat, via Geraldo, Carol Gibbons, Glenn Miller, and all points in between. Sweet and Swing, Fridays at 9 with me, Howard Kane. Served up to you by the Wine Cellar.
The Mannin Line, brought to you by NetZeroMatrix.com, your one-stop shop for advice on renewable energy solutions and other green initiatives.
Past my 21 minutes before 1 on Manx Radio. How much do you know about tax codes?
I've figured out a little bit.
Okay, this is Nicola who said, I've heard about having a second job. This is the Chamber of Commerce. And the Chamber of Commerce is exhorting people to there's a shortage of labour on the Isle of Man, so to kill two birds with one stone, get a second job, which will get skills into the workplace and earn more money. So could you confirm? I've heard that second job, but you don't pay 20%. Could you confirm if my tax code is 1450F, which means 14,500. What amount of earnings do I pay above 14,500 at 20% per? It's not clear if it's 20,000 or 25,000. Any ideas? And if not, where does she find out?
I mean, first of all, if you've got any questions, phone the income tax office. They'll go through it with you. In terms of a second job, because you have one tax code for your main job, it means that your second job will be taxed automatically at 20%. However, when it comes to the end of the tax year, that's all reconciled. So your first job, your main tax code, you originally get taxed at 10%. Second jobs are normally taxed at 20%. But as I said, that's not an extra tax because that's evened out at the end of the tax year.
Ronald said, is the Treasury Minister still a Stone Roses fan? Are you a Stone Roses fan?
Always. One of my best friends who was in Manchester gave me their first album and said, you've got to listen to this, and I became hooked, but missed out seeing them. However, when they did their first comeback at Heaton Park, went there with another good friend from the north and had an excellent time. Yes, I'm still a fan.
Okay, thank you, Ronald. That's that one answered. So this is from Adam, who said, is the Treasury Minister still a practising GP? And can he tell us what on earth is going on with Lloyd's in Ramsey?
So yes, we were just discussing the word practising GP. I'll get there eventually. Yes. I still do practice as a GP, partly because I enjoy it. I've done a couple of surgeries at various places around the island where they've got short-staffed, and also it is a bit of a reality check for me to get out and do my old job and experience what people are complaining about in the community and what's really affecting them. In terms of Lloyd's in Ramsey, it is embarrassing, and all I can do is apologise to the people of Ramsey for what has been really quite a disrupted service over the last couple of months.
I mean, in words of one syllable, what's gone wrong?
Staffing. Lloyd's in Ramsey run all three of the pharmacies there, and they've had, since the beginning of the summer, really quite severe staffing problems with people leaving and then having issues trying to appoint new staff, particularly qualified pharmacists, which have led to a breakdown in services so that they closed one of the branches completely in St Paul's Square and then had to close others to shift people from one to the other branch. And I know that they've had similar issues at other branches of Lloyd's across the Isle of Man. I've talked to their area manager. I've gone in there, talked to the staff. I think that we are getting to a solution there. The Department for Health and Social Care put in some of their own pharmacists for a while to try to keep the situation running. And I know that the new Minister for Health and Social Care is looking at getting another pharmacy established in the north to actually give a bit of choice between just the one monopoly provider. But it is about staffing rather than anything else, unfortunately.
How bad is the shortage of qualified pharmacists?
Well, it's bad enough to shut branches, and that's happened in other places. It's happened in the south. I know that Annika, their branch was shut for a couple of days. It really is affecting people. And again, as we were talking about the cost of living, it's making people quite scared, because if you're running low on what are essential drugs for you, and you can't guarantee that you'll get those in the time allotted, that creates a lot of fear, and then that has knock-on effects to the GP surgeries who are trying to deal with that and trying to do duplicate prescriptions and things like that. So the knock-on effects are really quite significant.
Well, the hassle gets passed down the line, doesn't it?
It does, and people having to queue for an hour to be told that they'll have to come back the next day is simply unacceptable. And we need a far better service. We deserve a far better service. We pay for a far better service from chemists. So I'm hoping Lloyds can actually get their staffing sorted out.
Mr. Callister was talking about a fair and equitable service for prescriptions.
Yep.
In Keys. What is it? Are prescription charges going up?
Not necessarily. Again, when you look at our prescription charges, they're about half there are in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
They're well over. I mean, the last time I was in the UK, I think they were £7.50. They're probably higher than that now. The vast majority of people, I think Minister Callister said, about 90% of people don't pay for prescriptions anyway, because they are exempt. Now, the exemption criteria are quite wide-ranging. So, yes, children and retired people don't pay for prescriptions. Those people who are very low income don't pay for prescriptions. But also, if you have certain medical conditions, you don't pay for prescriptions. So, for instance, if you've got an underactive thyroid, you don't pay for the thyroxine that you need. But you don't pay for any other prescription either. And so we've got a vast majority of people on the island who are exempt from paying. We spend about £20 million, I think, on prescription drugs each year. So that's a huge cost to the taxpayer. And what Minister Callister's doing is looking at the current exemptions and saying, is this fair? Just because you've got one... So if you've got diabetes, for instance, you don't pay for those drugs. But if you've got a heart condition, you do. Is this fair? And actually getting that fairness, not necessarily increasing the cost of prescriptions, but perhaps asking some people who at the moment don't pay to pay. And obviously we've also got the sort of 6-month or 12-month prescription certificate you can pay, which spreads out the costs of that and gives a lump sum you pay for everything you need.
That's about £60 a year or something like that. Yeah.
And that pays for all of your prescriptions. So there are various ways of looking at that, because as you said right at the start, money is a bit tight. Money's going to get tighter. We're in a difficult situation, so what government should be doing is looking at how we spend taxpayers' money, do it in the best way possible to maintain those services that we all deserve and take for granted.
Okay. In Jersey, they charge for seeing a GP, which obviously brings in money, a considerable amount of money, and this is a note in from Gwen, who just said, well, she used the word malingerers. She said, a charge for going to the GP keeps malingerers away. They do it in Jersey. Why don't we do it on the Isle of Man?
I mean, they do it in Jersey. They do it in the Republic of Ireland. They have different healthcare systems. One of the tenets of the NHS has always been that it was free at the point of need. The number of people who I described as malingerers is very, very low. I mean, people go to the GP for a whole range of...
It's a fallacy.
Yes, people go to GPs for a whole range of reasons. A lot of those are because they're worried about their health. Now, when they come and see me, I may not be worried about their health, but there is that need for reassurance. So I don't think we have a problem with people overusing GP services. I think we have a problem with the numbers of GPs, with the way that they're supported by things like practice nurses, by community pharmacists, by a whole range of other things that we can do to improve community care.
Okay, we're running out of time. I'm back with Dr. Allinson in a moment.
Concerned, confused or curious about climate change? Want to do your part? Then visit netzeromatrix.com, helping businesses and individuals understand the net zero targets that government has set, how they'll be achieved and what impact it will have upon us. Plus, get practical advice and tips for saving energy, the options available for switching to renewable energy technologies and much more. We all need to do what we can. So visit netzeromatrix.com and join us.
Construction waste today.
Tells recycle for another day.
A builder skip or two.
Tells skips will bring to you.
At Tell Skip Hire and Waste Disposal in Snugborough, you only pay for the waste you bring. For waste disposal and skips, give us a call on 677 137. That's 677 137. Visit Tells today or find Tells Limited on Facebook.
Call Tell Skips today.
677 137.
Just Care Products for mobility solutions.
Visit Just Care Products right behind B&Q and see our wide range of mobility aids, from small everyday items to rise-recline chairs, beds, scooters and our airline-friendly foldable power chair. Plus, we are the island's only stockists of cosy feet footwear. Just Care Products, right behind B&Q.
Just Care Products, 627 177.
It's time to celebrate city status with a bang. This year's fireworks display in Douglas will be bigger and better than ever. The fun starts on the promenade at 7:15 p.m. with the Best Guy competition. Then at 7:30, the fireworks display will be lighting up the bay for a spectacular show choreographed to music. Douglas Fireworks, Friday, November the 4th. Brought to you by Douglas City Council, sponsored by Selton Manx and supported by your nation station, Manx Radio.
Let's win a mini break in Belfast. Let's play Guess Me with Flybe. To celebrate their new winter schedule from the island to Belfast, Flybe have got together with Manx Radio to give you the chance to win one of 2 amazing breaks for 2 people, including return flights, 2 nights at a plush hotel and tickets for the Titanic experience. Be listening all next week to see if you can identify the Northern Irish celebrity from the clip of their voice. Then text 166 177 for your chance to be in the draw. There'll be extra clues on the Manx Radio Facebook page too. Guess Me with Flybe and your nation station Manx Radio, all next week.
The Mannin Line, brought to you by netzeromatrix.com, the Isle of Man's main net zero progress website.
Faster Bites 10 to 1. Hi, Sally. You're live with Alex Allinson. Oh, we've lost Sally. In that case, let's go to... sorry about that, Sally. I want to go to Juan then. Hi, Juan. You're live with Alex Allinson.
Hey, good afternoon, Andy. Good afternoon, Alex.
Good afternoon.
2 different subjects, 2 different questions I want to ask you. Firstly, the proposal for the TT and the racing on the Saturday. And I know we have this in the sport that I'm involved with, so I just wanted to post this question out. Is this have any connection to the revenue stream, to selling the product to the media and the TV stations, as to switching this over to a Saturday because of the audience that they're going to get? Is that one of the reasons why this is getting done? My second one is totally different altogether. With the proposals that the new Prime Minister has in now, which was done while he was the Chancellor, of having digital currency come into play. Do you know that of a proposal that is going to do away with cash, as in cash in our pockets, and that the world's going to go fully digital? Because obviously the bigger issue with Russia-Ukraine thing is far deeper and far bigger than a lot of people look at. One of the strongest traded currencies at the moment is the ruble, because it's going gold-backed, and obviously contradicting the whole of the fiat system that we're working with. So there's obviously a far, far bigger picture in this altogether. So, my question is that, as the Treasury Minister, do you know of a proposal that money is going to be done away with and we're going to go digital?
Okay, well, really interesting questions, Julian. Thanks very much. First of all, in terms of the TT racing schedule, no, this was nothing to do with either the live streaming or terrestrial TV. I know that various football games are changed around at short notice because of TV rights. This was far more in terms of viewers being on the island and looking at the number of people who actually left before senior race day anyway, and trying to incorporate that so that people could come over here for 2 weekends and experience racing there. So that was the reason for doing it, rather than anything to do with TV. In terms of digital currency, this ties in really with the first caller who was talking about access to cash, and I think during the pandemic, a lot of people got used to digital payments and contactless payments for obvious reasons. What we've seen since then, though, is a drift back into cash, and some of it is for the reasons you talk about. That security that you've got, hard money in your pocket to pay bills in case you can't get access to an ATM or the shop you go into doesn't take digital payments. When we've looked at the various research around the world, I think more and more people will be using less and less cash, but you'll still have people who need cash, and that's estimated about 10%. So whilst the number of banknotes we print each year probably will reduce, and the number of coins we mint, I think there will always be that need for cash, and certainly there are no policies of the Isle of Man Treasury to go cash-free or cashless in the future.
Okay, all right, June, thanks for that. Good to hear from you. I think we found Sally. Hi, Sally, you're live with Alex Allinson.
Oh, good afternoon, Mr. Allinson.
Hello.
It's Sally Jagan, and I think I spoke to you previously about the single occupancy on the rates.
Yep.
I'm just wondering how far forward this is going. Apparently, before COVID hit, it was on the books to get it all sorted. And I've heard nothing, and I'm sure nobody else has.
Okay, we're nearly out of time.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of overall rate reform and the ideas of single occupancy, I think the Cabinet Office is still looking into the various issues, but there is no timetable for changing things at the moment, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you, Sally. I just wanted to get you back on air with that. One final question. In February, during the budget, Treasury announced it was we'll be giving £42 million to tackle climate change. And yet we've heard nothing. Where's the money gone? And if they don't spend it, does it go back to Treasury?
So if the Climate Change Board don't allocate it, yes, it will go back to Treasury. What they've been doing is apart from doing various reports, and the Climate Change Action Plan was a major one that came to Tynwald. What they've been doing is supporting some of the initiatives that government have been applying to the rise in energy prices. So, for instance, some of the initiatives from DEFRA in terms of giving people free insulation, free draft excluders, is being financed from that fund. So it's wide-ranging now. What started off as reducing emissions now is also allowing people to reduce their energy use, to reduce their energy bills.
Okay, two more quick questions. When are we going to get an Auditor General?
I think the job description has been done, and I think they're looking for one. Whether they can find the person with the right qualifications, I think we'll have to see who applies.
Okay. Have you written next year's budget yet? That's a question in from Sam.
No, I haven't written it, but I'm in the process of meeting with all the departments. We've sketched out roughly what it will look like. We're meeting with all departments and going through what the amount of money they need and what we can give to them. So it's an ongoing process which will be completed in November, December.
Okay, and again, briefly, if you would, at the end of March, when the electricity subvention comes to an end, what's going to happen?
What will happen then is the government will work very closely with Manx Utilities to see how much money we've spent supporting households across the island in terms of capping the electricity prices. We'll have to then look at the gas price and the future exposure to Manx Utilities, and I think prices will need to go up, but we'll do that in a graded and appropriate way.
Okay. Thanks for being with us today. Appreciate it, Treasury Minister.
Always a pleasure.
We'll see you next year, so in the meantime, have a happy Christmas.
Is it that time of year already?
It is already. Thanks to Minister Allinson today and Chris Quirk for producing Mannin Line.
Let's wrap up warm